Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today, we're going way beyond blurry lights and grainy photos.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be talking about, actual crashed UFOs.
Sounds interesting.
And this alleged secret government program to, retrieve them.
Okay, I'm listening. What's our source material?
So we're diving into some excerpts from a News Nation special report. It's called Hunting UFOs, the Crash Retrieval Whistleblower.
Crash Retrieval Whistleblower.
That's pretty dramatic. So who is this whistleblower?
Right. So the whistleblower at the center of all this is a guy named Jacob Barber.
Okay. And what makes him so credible?
Well, he's not just some random dude, claiming he saw something weird.
Gotcha. So he's got some background.
Yeah, he's a former Air Force Special Operations veteran with a background in combat control, helicopter piloting.
Wow.
Even some experience in a super classified program.
Okay, that's definitely starting to sound more intriguing.
Right. He calls the location of this program the range.
A range, huh? What kind of range? That's what we're going to try to figure out. But let me just say, News Nation actually confirmed all of his background.
Oh, so they did their due diligence.
Yeah, they even talked to this decorated Delta Force veteran, Colonel John Glitch. He basically vouched for Barber, said he was a credible guy.
So we've got someone who's not only experienced in military operations, but also has a history with classified programs. And this range he talks about, is that where all the UFO stuff went down?
That seems to be the implication. Barber says it wasn't your usual military testing ground. He claims it was where the government was testing and recovering all sorts of advanced technologies.
Okay, so not just experimental jets and stuff.
He seems to be suggesting something a lot more extraordinary.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's get into it. Did Barber actually see any of these, what do they call them? UAPs? At this range?
He says he saw a lot of objects doing things that, defy our current understanding of, like physics.
Right, those 5 observables they always talk about.
Oop, exactly. Things like sudden acceleration, hypersonic speeds, moving between air and water, seamlessly.
Yeah, disappearing and reappearing somewhere else.
That whole transmedium travel thing, it's wild stuff.
Totally. So Barber saw all that firsthand.
He describes objects appearing right out of a mountain ridge.
From a mountain ridge? Seriously?
Imagine seeing something just materialize out of solid rock.
That's mind-blowing.
And then he also talks about seeing them change shape and color right in front of his eyes.
Sounds like more than just your average lights in the sky.
Way more. So how do you think he went from just observing these UAPs to, retrieving them?
Well, he says he eventually became a contractor for the intelligence community.
Okay, so that's how he gets involved in all the cloak and dagger stuff.
It seems so. He claims his job was recovering this advanced technology, including, as he puts it, downed UAPs.
Hold on, downed UAPs? You mean crashed
Right?
UFO?
That's what he's implied.
This is getting a little crazy.
Yeah.
So what was his first encounter with one of these downed objects?
He describes it as a white, egg-shaped craft, about 20 feet long.
An egg? Really?
Yeah.
Where did they find this thing?
He doesn't give a specific location, but says they recovered it at night. And get this, he was the one piloting the helicopter.
He piloted the helicopter, transporting a giant egg-shaped UFO.
That's his story. He described this egg as pearly white, totally seamless, no markings, no seams, nothing. Just a smooth egg shape.
That's a pretty vivid image.
Yeah. And he says it was dangling from a 150-foot-long line beneath his helicopter.
Okay, that's a little hard to picture, but is there any evidence for any of this? Did anyone else see this thing?
Well, this is where it gets even more interesting.
Oh.
News Nation actually got their hands on some video footage.
Video footage of the egg.
Yeah, showing this egg-shaped object being transported by helicopter. They had it analyzed, and it seems pretty legit.
Wow, so there's actual video evidence of this thing.
It seems so. And this isn't the only object he mentions. He also talks about retrieving a disc-shaped object. They called it the acorn.
An acorn. Like the nut.
Yeah, he said it had 8 distinct sections.
So we've got this decorated veteran claiming he recovered 2, let's say, unusual objects. And there's video evidence of at least one of them.
It's definitely a compelling story.
And one that, the government might want to keep under wraps.
Exactly. And this is where Barber's story starts to get a little, unsettling.
Oh no, what happened?
He says he and his team started having some really weird health problems.
Health problems? Like what?
Hair loss, skin peeling off. He even says he developed a heart murmur.
That's scary. What did they think caused it?
Well, it all seemed to happen after they recovered this sealed container.
A sealed container. What was in it?
That's the crazy part. He claims they never told them what was inside.
So they were just transporting some mysterious box, and they got sick after.
That's what he says. He called it a mystery box.
Yeah.
And the things that happened to him and his team after handling it are pretty disturbing.
This is starting to sound less like sci-fi and more like a horror movie.
Yeah, it takes a dark turn. And this wasn't just happening to Barber, by the way.
Oh, so it was a whole team.
He says other members started experiencing similar things.
Makes you wonder, what are the risks involved with interacting with these, whatever they are, UAPs?
Right. And there are some interesting parallels here to other cases.
Other cases of people getting sick after a UFO encounter.
This Professor Gary Nolan, a Stanford immunologist, reviewed Barber's medical records.
So a real scientist took this seriously.
Yeah, and he suspected radiation exposure. He even said there could be long-term consequences like cancer.
That's terrifying.
It really is. And there's a precedent for this too. Remember Airman John Burroughs?
From Rendlesham Forest, yeah. That was back in 1980.
And he had similar injuries. His medical records were classified for years.
It took Senator John McCain to get them declassified.
Exactly. It makes you wonder why there's so much secrecy around these potential UAP-related injuries.
That's a good question. It's almost like they're hiding something.
Well, secrecy definitely seems to be a major theme in Barber's account.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that.
And it gets even more intense when he talks about retrieving stolen Panasonic Tough books.
Tough books, what are those?
They're like super rugged laptops. And apparently these ones contained censored data from UAP operations.
Censored data, like what kind of information?
We're talking potentially very sensitive stuff about UAP movements, energy signatures, maybe even their material composition.
It's like something people would want to keep secret.
Absolutely. This data would be incredibly valuable.
So who was stealing it and why?
That's what Barber is trying to figure out. He believed it was worth millions on the black market to governments, private companies, anyone interested in reverse engineering this technology.
So there's a black market for alien tech? That's crazy.
That's what it seems like. And Barber claims he was part of a team tasked with recovering these stolen tough books.
So he was basically a UFO repo man.
In a way, yes. But this is where things take a really dark turn. We're talking missing hard drives, a shootout at a retrieval site.
Hold on, a shootout.
Yeah, he describes a situation where they were ambushed. And he started to get this feeling that someone was trying to get rid of him and his team permanently.
That sounds like he got in over his head.
He mentions this term plausible deniability, meaning if anything happened to them, those in charge could just deny any involvement.
It's cold.
He even said he was afraid of becoming the hidden hand that gets severed, like they would just make him disappear.
That's chilling. So what did he do?
Well, instead of going into hiding, he did something unexpected. He started this organization called Skywatcher.
Skywatcher. What is that?
It's a privately funded group made up of former program insiders like himself.
So he went from black ops to like a private UFO investigation team.
Exactly. They're dedicated to investigating UAPs and revealing the truth about what's really going on.
That's pretty bold. What kind of stuff did they do?
Well, this is where things get even weirder. They decided to conduct their own operation.
Their own operation? Like what?
They were using something called a psionic asset.
A psionic asset? What in the world is that?
That's a great question. And it takes us into one of the most mind-bending parts of Barber's story.
So a psionic asset. What does that even mean?
Basically, someone with psychic abilities.
Psychic abilities. Seriously, you're saying this government program was using, like, psychics?
That's what Barber claims. He says they used these individuals to interact with UAPs, summon them, communicate with them, maybe even pilot them.
Hold on, psychic powers and UFOs, now we're really getting into X-Files territory. Come on, is there anyone else who can back up these claims?
Actually, yeah. Another Special Forces operator who worked with Barber, he confirmed the whole psionic asset thing.
Really? So it's not just Barber making this stuff up?
It seems not. And believe it or not, Lou Elizondo, the guy who ran the Pentagon's UAP program, he's hinted at this too.
Lou Elizondo. You mean the guy who basically blew the whistle on the government's UFO cover-up?
The one and only. He's talked about psychic abilities being real and maybe even more common than we think.
Okay, so let's say for a minute that this is all true, that these psychic abilities are a real thing. What were these Skywatcher folks trying to do with their psionic asset? Summon a UFO on demand?
Something like that, yeah. They wanted to see if they could replicate what Barber says the government program was doing, using psychics to interact with UAPs.
And what happened? Did it work?
Well, the results were, let's just say they were pretty startling.
Startling in a good way or a bad way?
During the experiment, the psionic asset started freaking out, so they felt this, like, overwhelming wave of distress.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good.
And then this object appeared in the sky.
A UFO?
It was lenticular, like a disc. You know, the classic flying saucer shape?
Well, so they actually summoned a UFO using psychic powers. That's insane.
Well, hold on, it gets even weirder. Remember that egg Barber described?
The one they pulled out of the mountain.
That one. It suddenly started falling from the sky.
Falling, like it was shot down.
No, more like it lost control. And right when that happened, the psionic asset totally disconnected. Like whatever link they had was severed.
Wait, you're saying they summon a UFO, then another one starts falling out of the sky, and the psychic person loses their connection? That's a lot to take in. Did they get any of this on video?
Yeah, they actually filmed the whole thing. They got footage of the egg falling, and it looks a lot like those videos the Navy released a few years back. You know, the ones with the tic-tac-shaped objects.
Okay, so we've got multiple UFOs, psychic powers, video evidence. This is getting a little hard to follow. It's like a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape.
It is a lot to process, but, you know, amidst all the strangeness, it's important to remember why Barber is telling his story.
Yeah, why risk everything to come forward with all this crazy stuff?
He believes the truth about UAPs needs to come out, that the government's been covering it up for way too long, and that the public deserves to know.
He's putting himself out there, that's for sure. So what does he hope to achieve by going public?
Transparency, accountability. He wants the government to admit what they've known all along. That UAPs are real, they've recovered crashed objects. There's potentially technology out there that could change the world as we know it.
And what about those health problems he talked about, the stuff that happened to him and his team? Does he think those were caused by the UAPs themselves?
That's the big question, isn't it? We don't know for sure what caused those injuries, but Barber seems to think they were directly related to his work, especially after handling that sealed container.
That mysterious box they were hauling around.
Exactly. And the fact that, according to Barber, the government's been classifying medical records of people who might have been hurt by UAPs, well, that's pretty suspicious. Makes you wonder what they're trying to hide.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence. So did Barber just, go straight to the media with all this?
Actually, she tried to work within the system first.
Yeah.
Met with some staffers for Senator Rubio.
Rubio,
Yeah.
the senator from Florida.
That's the one. He's been one of the most vocal advocates for UAP disclosure in Congress.
Yeah, he's been pushing the Pentagon to take this stuff seriously for years. Even helped create that new office, the AARO, to investigate UAPs.
Exactly. Barber wanted to get this information to the people who could actually do something about it. He thought his testimony could help change policy, maybe lead to more transparency about what the government knows.
So, kind of a behind-the-scenes approach. Did it work?
Hard to say, but either way, it's a pretty bold move.
It's all pretty bold, if you ask me. This whole story, secret programs, advanced technology, threats, and now we've got this private organization, Skywatcher, running around doing their own investigations. What's the deal with them anyway? What's their end game?
Well, it seems like they're made up of people like Barber, insiders who've seen the truth and are fed up with the government's secrecy. They're convinced that the truth needs to come out, no matter the cost.
So what are they doing? Chasing UFOs around the desert?
More than that, they're actively gathering evidence, using advanced tech, and, as we've discussed, exploring the whole psionics angle. They want to document UAP activity and bring proof to the public, hard evidence.
And you mentioned they're working with government agencies.
Barber claims to have contacts within the intelligence community, people who are sympathetic to his cause.
So maybe there are people on the inside who want the truth to come out too.
Could be. It's hard to say for sure, though, whether these contacts are real, how much they're cooperating with Skywatcher. That's all still a bit of a mystery.
So let's recap. We've got a whistleblower with a pretty wild story, some potential evidence, and a private organization dedicated to uncovering the truth about UAPs. What's the bottom line here? What does it all mean?
I think it means we're entering a new era of UAP research and disclosure. More credible witnesses are coming forward. Scientists are starting to take it seriously. Even Congress is demanding answers. It's a pretty exciting time.
And maybe a little bit scary too. What's the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all this?
I'd say approach this topic with both curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't just believe everything you hear, but don't dismiss it out of hand either.
So how do we find that balance? How do we navigate this world of you know, crazy claims and potential misinformation.
Critical thinking. Look at the evidence. Consider the source. Be aware of your own biases. This is a complex issue, and it deserves our full attention.
So what happens next? What's the next chapter in this story?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Will Barber's testimony lead to more transparency from the government? Will Skywatcher find definitive proof of UAPs and where they come from? We'll have to wait and see.
One thing's for sure, though. This topic isn't going away anytime soon.
And we'll be here to cover it every step of the way.
Now, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I want to touch on. This whole idea of psionic abilities.
Yeah.
It raises some pretty big questions, like, if it's real, what does it mean for our understanding of ourselves, our place in the universe? That's something to think about.
Absolutely. It challenges our fundamental assumptions about reality.
Well, folks, that's about all the time we have for today. This has been a pretty mind-blowing dive into the world of UAPs and the claims of Jacob Barber.
It's been a fascinating exploration, a reminder that there's still so much we don't know about our universe.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the mysteries out there.
Right.
I mean, crashed UFOs, secret government programs, psychic powers, black markets for alien tech. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild ride.
Every time you think you've got a handle on things, bam, something even more unbelievable pops up.
But amidst all the craziness, there's this clear message that Barber's trying to get across. He's not just telling some sensational story.
Right, he's genuinely convinced that the government's been keeping the truth about UAPs hidden. And for a long time.
Yeah, and he's not the only one saying this. We're seeing more and more credible people coming forward with these stories.
Pilots, intelligence officials, scientists.
Exactly. People you can't just dismiss as, kooks or conspiracy theorists.
It's getting harder and harder to ignore. The evidence keeps piling up.
And while some people might still try to brush it all off as fantasy or delusion, there's this growing sense that something extraordinary is happening.
Something that, totally challenges our understanding of the world. Our place in it,
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here? What are the next steps in figuring all of this out?
Well, first things first, we need more transparency.
Transparency from who?
The government.
Yeah, they need to start declassifying information, let people speak freely without being afraid of, getting in trouble.
And actually engage in a real conversation with the public about what they know.
Exactly.
That's a pretty tall order, don't you think?
Yeah.
Given all the secrecy surrounding this stuff.
It might seem that way, but there are some hopeful signs. Senator Rubio's involvement, that new AARO office. The media is paying more attention. It's putting pressure on the government.
Yeah, they can't just keep stonewalling forever.
Yeah.
What about scientists? What role do they play in all this? Scientists are key. They need to be analyzing the data, developing new technologies to study UAPs, helping us understand what we're dealing with.
So we need more scientists to take this seriously.
Absolutely. And from all different fields. Physicists, astronomers, biologists, even engineers.
Bring all the brain power we can to the table.
Exactly. Approach it with open minds and real scientific rigor.
Okay, so what about the big question? Extraterrestrial life. Are we talking aliens here?
It's definitely a possibility, but we have to be careful about jumping to conclusions.
Right, extraterrestrial doesn't automatically equal little green men.
Exactly. There could be other explanations, maybe some advanced technology developed by another country, or something we haven't even thought of yet.
So keep an open mind, consider all the options, don't get ahead of ourselves.
Exactly. We're in uncharted territory here. We need intellectual humility and, a willingness to accept that we don't have all the answers yet.
But by asking questions, gathering evidence, having these conversations, we can get closer to the truth.
I think that's the biggest takeaway from all of this. The pursuit of knowledge, trying to understand the unknown. It's a journey worth taking.
Even if it leads us to places we never expected. Well, this has been a truly mind-blowing deep dive into the world of UAPs and the claims of Jacob Barber.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About the nature of reality, our place in the cosmos.
Thanks for joining us, and remember, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the mysteries out there.